Hi guys, welcome back to rexpearson.com, the level 3 beginner guitar course. We're going to be covering something called scales, which is something that you're going to have to cover at some point in your time of playing. Whether or not you go down the lead guitar route at some stage, it doesn't really matter because it's used in all styles of playing, and it's a great thing to learn for improving your musicality, getting to know your harmonies, getting to know melodies and how to write songs basically. That was basically me using the scale that you're going to learn in this part. I was moving up and down the fretboard a little bit because I couldn't help myself a bit, but we're going to be learning one position on the fretboard, which means that you're going to know the notes that you can play of this scale that I'm going to show you in a minute within a certain range on the fretboard. We will look at, in the later levels, how to open up the fretboard and be able to move across the neck naturally and flowingly without having to sort of think about it too much. But for now, we're going to learn one scale position. First thing first though, what is a scale? Well, quite simply, a scale is a group of notes that work quite well together within a certain key. So if we're playing in a certain key, there is a scale that will match that quite nicely, and it gives us like a little guide as to what we can play that will sound good over the chords that are happening in the background, you know, the rhythm of the band, the whole band section playing. So the scale that I was using is called a pentatonic scale. It's called pentatonic because it's got 5 notes as opposed to a scale that sometimes has 7, 8, sometimes 9, sometimes even 10 notes, or even 12. But we're learning a 5-note scale. Now that means that it runs from one note. There are 5 notes before it then repeats the same notes basically, but a lot higher in pitch. So we're going to learn it as a position on the fretboard. That's the first thing that I want to do. So let's learn the position. A minor pentatonic. You start with the first finger on the 5th fret and you play that note. And when you're practicing these scales, try and use alternate picking for each note. That's one thing to bear in mind when you're practicing these. Very important that you learn to do alternate picking as much as possible so it can be as natural as possible. The next thing is a 4th finger stretch. Now the whole thing is going to be centered around these frets from the 5th fret to the 8th fret here. It's not going to go outside of this box. We sometimes call it a box shape because it sort of visually looks like a bit of a box that's drawn around the fretboard. The fingers that you're going to use, and this is a guide for most scales, is going to be the first finger if it lands anywhere on this 5th fret. It will be a 2nd finger if it lands anywhere on the 6th, 3rd finger if it lands anywhere on the 7th, and 4th finger if it lands anywhere on the 8th fret. As you play each note, make sure you only play the note and then release when you play the next note, rather than keeping it held down. So the next note of this one, you played the 5th fret, next note is a 4th finger on the 8th fret here, which is a C. So you've got those 2 notes on that string. Alternate pick those 2 notes and make sure you release each finger as you do it. Next string then, you're going to do a 1 finger and 3rd finger combination. So you're going to go 5th fret, 7th fret. Then you repeat on the next string. And then you repeat on the next string, nice and easy. Then the final 2 strings are 1, 4, 1, 4. So play, when you're practicing this, alternate pick and play all the way up the scale and then all the way back down the scale. Okay, first stage of learning a scale is to memorize the notes. So that's what we're doing at this stage now. Learn how the scale goes from bottom to top. That's the first stage. But what is the point of using a scale if you only know the visual of it, if you only know what it looks like and how to play it up and down? This is where your experience of playing melodies and playing musically comes in. I'm going to give you a couple of pointers about how we can use this scale when we improvise or when we come up with melodies. The first thing is to know the root note of the scale. Just like in chords, you've got a note that's more important than any of the other notes, and they are the root notes. In this position, we've got 3 root notes. The first note, which is the A, because we're playing an A minor pentatonic. The next A happens 5 notes up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next note happens here. And that's another A, so that's another root note there that we can use. Then the final root note is 5 notes above that. You count this note as 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That 6th note there is the 1 again. That's another A. So you've got 3 root notes within the scale. Why are they important? Well, they are the notes that you need to bring out as much as possible. Think of it like writing a sentence in music. When you talk, you have full stops and you have commas and things like that. In music, you use your root note as a full stop. So when you've done a little bit of an improvisation or created a melody, if you end it on the root note, it kind of sounds like you knew what you were doing. If I was to play a quick improvisation and not finish on the root note, it kind of feels like it wants to finish on a root note. So if I play the same thing but add the root note on the end, it will sound like I've sort of said something and paused. Sounds like I've finished because I've landed on the root note. I didn't have to use that one, I could have used any of the root notes. Finished on the lower root note there, or I could finish on the higher one. And because I'm adding that root note on the end of the scale, you can sort of put a full stop. And it's a musical way of playing the scale. So if you're improvising with this, and if you go over to the website, I've got a backing track for you guys, which you'll be able to use to practice improvisations using this scale. Try finishing any lines or any melodies you create with a root note, and you'll find that you'll sound a lot more musical than you would have done if you were just sort of aimlessly wandering around this scale. That's one way you can practice the scale, is by locating the root and then improvising and trying to bring it out a little bit. Get to know your scale as much as possible. Really try and listen to the notes. The final thing that you can do with scales to help practice them, you know, this minor pentatonic, is a term called a sequence, a musical sequence. Now that's something that we're going to cover in level 4, and we're not going to cover now because it's a little bit, it's not necessary for what you guys need to learn. So at the end of this lesson, you want to be able to play the A minor pentatonic scale up and down, nice and slowly. That's just for demonstration. Nice and slowly, alternate picked, releasing each note as you go along. Have a go at composing some melodies. Have a go with the backing track that's on rexpearson.com, and if you've got a webcam, by all means put up a demonstration if you're playing, because I'd like to see how you guys are getting on. And the other thing you can do is obviously compose some melodies using that scale. So for now, well done on learning the scale. I hope you got it from, you know, root to tip. The next lesson, we're going to be looking at some new chords, because it's been a while since we've learned any new chords, and I'm sure you've come across songs now dealing with chords that you might not have covered before, some of the chord qualities that you haven't covered in this course. So now we're going to look at those chords, and I'm going to show you some 7th chords and some dominant chords as well. So I'll see you guys in the next part, where we'll be covering that. Catch you then.